Okay, I'd like to start the Audit Committee meeting for the month of July. We don't have any public speakers. I need a motion to approve the minutes, please. Need a motion to approve minutes. Second? All in favor? Carried. Okay, there is no meeting scheduled for August. Next meeting is scheduled for the September 27th. And the agenda will include a presentation of the Independent Accountants Review Report for the second quarter of 2009, and the reappointment of the external auditors, and the annual Audit Committee report. Next thing is Dave, first quarter 10 audit report. It's a draft till today.
This team. It's light.
Okay, Dave. We have everything under control now.
I think so. What I'd like to do is we have completed our review of the financial statements for the MTA for the period ended March 31st, 2010. As you know, we do a review of the financial statements and not an audit. And a review consists of a number of analytical procedures and a lot of discussions and inquiries with management about the results of the financial statements, and doesn't include all the steps that would be necessary for us to attest to the financial statements. But based upon those procedures, we didn't find anything that would cause us to believe that the information that's included in the financial statements need to be adjusted or is incorrect. I do want to point out to you, however, that the organization, as we previously discussed, has adopted the requirements of Governmental Accounting Standards Board number 53, which deals with their financial reporting for derivative financial instruments. Those are included. The impact of that is included in the financial statements. If you will look on page 19, and if you look at the bottom part of the page under non-current assets, you're going to see two entries, which is the result of recording this. You're going to see a derivative asset, and you're also going to see a deferred, it's called a deferred outflow, which is basically the deferred cash from the deferred losses from the derivative financial statements, or the market values. You're also on page 20. It's a deferred. It's not an asset. It's shown in the asset, but it's a deferred amount. All we call it. All it represents is a deferred amount.
And what is it?
Because basically, remember, we're not recognizing gains or losses currently.
Right.
We're deferring them, and if this thing works,
So what is this 279?
That's a loss.
It's a loss.
it's a market value adjustment.
Right.
Current market value adjustment.
Decrease in market value.
279 on paper.
It's a loss. I mean, it would be a loss if we recognize it today. We're deferring it. Okay.
$279 million.
Right.
If you take the 21 and 279, that's the 311 million
Oh, got
that
it.
I've been talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 311.
That's what it
And the reverse of that is on page 20. If you look under non-current liabilities, we're recognizing the liability for those amounts. It's a derivative liability and a derivative, it's basically derivative liability. There's two elements to it. And there's also a piece, now by the way, there is one piece, if you look on page 22, and if you look under non-operating revenues and expenses, you're going to see derivative expenses, and that basically represents the change in fair value of two swap transactions that did not meet the hedging criteria, and therefore we will, the organization will account for the changes in market values currently in income. That's a piece of it. Pardon? Pardon?
Page 22.
22.
Okay, yeah, because I was trying, all right. It didn't add up.
Right, now it will. It's 332, I think, is the number, and it all adds, all of those.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And then again, this also includes the off-market element value that we talked about regarding the amortization and everything else. It's the 332 total, it's the 311, which is your actual
Right.
hedge fund bonds. And that's how we account for it in the balance sheet.
And then I want to point out that on page 67 through '71 are new disclosures that are required under the accounting standard.
67 to 72.
So the first two are the ones that are in effect as hedges. Is that right?
Are not hedges. Are not hedges.
Not effective hedges.
Or not effective.
The other ones are effective.
Actually, I mean, there's a bad nomenclature. The issue is that they just aren't hedges, and therefore you can't use hedge accounting. Therefore, they're subject to mark-to-market accounting. It's the best way to say it.
Well,
They were always
Right,
effective.
right, right.
Imprecise is not the word.
Other than that, there are no changes in the financial statements.
Just want to make a comment that we'll review this on a quarterly basis, and if there are other ineffective hedges, we also will basically.
Yeah, the issue is, by the way, I want to say, now, while we did not do an audit of the quarterly financial statement, we did do an audit of the hedge accounting. I mean, we had a lot of people involved, a lot of specialists involved that understand each of these, financial instruments, and have basically looked at it really hard. And we're okay with the accounting. I think what Mike's talking about, these things weren't, the accounting standards allow you to designate these as hedges first time. Now, from now on, when you enter into a similar type of this transaction, it has to be designated as a hedge at the time of the transaction, and would be designed as a hedge. These weren't necessarily designed as hedges.
Why would they design this?
Just basically, let me say it a different way, Mark. They weren't designed to meet the hedge accounting standards at the time because they didn't exist, right? When people design hedges today, they look at the accounting standards and kind of design them around the accounting standard. In the absence of an accounting standard, they didn't. So,
What they were intended, I guess, to do originally was to get a lower rate of interest using a synthetic vehicle than could have been gotten in the market. Whether you want to call that a hedge or you want to call it something different, I think that's the problem with the nomenclature.
But weren't they originally intended to match a stream of payments?
in effect, they were
On our
paired.
side.
I assume they were in effect paired. Huh?
They basically were done to mitigate risk.
We understand that, but weren't they paired against another obligation? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Now, some of those obligations have changed, by the way, over time.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the obligations they were paired with at the date that those transactions were entered into.
But if you take one side, if you go out and buy a hedge, which is paying you on an index, which is, you believe, is going to mimic
Right.
an obligation, an ongoing payment obligation that you have, then that is basically going to work as a hedge in this analysis, isn't it? And what happens isn't the problem with these two that they started, I don't know, but isn't it they were supposed to match a line of payments, and in experience they have not, in fact, because circumstances change.
That's correct.
So when you say that when you enter into a swap transaction and you're being very careful to look at the accounting standards
Right.
to make sure it qualifies, blah, 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 well, it might qualify when you enter into it. But then again, it might not qualify at some point in the future, depending on events.
That's
right?
the issue, Mark.
Why is that the issue?
The issue is that once they fail to be under the accounting standard, once it's determined that they no longer are effective, now you go through a series of tests, and you can use other
So you
tests.
determine they're no longer effective.
Then the accounting goes back to mark to
Then they
market.
shift to the top. Fine, which is where they would have been anyway.
Right. That's the issue.
Fine, okay.
That's the issue. Now, in the private sector, that's considered bad,
Why?
because the view is it was I'm just, you're asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the private sector, it was a risk management tool, and the market perceived it as a risk management tool, and it raises the question of whether or not those tools are really effective to manage risk. That's the issue that goes
I
on.
mean, proportionally, we're looking pretty good here. The ones that work as opposed to the ones that don't.
Well, I don't know, I mean, there are ones here where the mark-to-market is $38 million. I'd argue that that's not working so well, but
Only if you have to get out of it.
only if you have to get out of it. But look at the one on the top. If you want to get out of it, you're supposed to just pay 1.3 instead of get the hell out of it.
Anyway, it's a complicated accounting standard. The organization has done a good job of implementing it currently. They will continue. Will be required to, on every financial accounting period, required to test, or the organization is required to test its effectiveness.
How is it working against whatever index is used as a benchmark? In other words, are the hedges producing the net rate of return that was anticipated against existing?
The answer is that they're managing, they're required to move in opposite directions, that's right, and they're doing that effectively right now.
We've locked in
some relatively low rates of interest on the fixed side of these hedges, and then we're receiving a payment based on an index that we are then using to pay off our variable rate debt. And right now, that's working pretty well.
Right.
We're getting an inflow that is pretty good at matching our outflow for the most part. So on the variable rate side of this thing, it's looking pretty good, and on the fixed rate side of it, we've locked in rates anywhere from, depending on the swap, 3% to 6%. So
This question of the index versus the allegation, if you have, I've lost the terminology, integrated swap or whatever, I mean, if you manage to contract with somebody who says that his stream of payments to you will in fact be dictated by your stream of payments on an obligation you're trying to match, I mean, that's cool. Mostly in the market, you get
Right.
an index stream paid to you, and you try to find an index that looks like what you think you're going to have to pay on your obligation, and that can go out of line.
That's true. That's fair.
Okay, any other questions of David? I need an approval to accept the interim audit report as submitted. Second? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lamont, you're next.
Thank you. Working with audit services and the internal control officers for each of the agencies, we have put together an audit recommendation compliance report, which I've handed out to you, listing those audit recommendations which have exceeded their revised implementation date by more than 6 months. We have representatives from each of the agencies here to answer any questions that you may have regarding any of these outstanding recommendations.
Any questions? I think it's pretty much cut and dry. Well,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for... Okay, Lamont, you're back on.
Okay. As you know, each year we are required to prepare an internal control certification and summary. The purpose of the internal control certification is to basically attest to the fact that the MTA's internal control program is compliant with the requirements of the Internal Control Act. I'm happy to say once again this year we were able to certify full compliance with the requirements of the Internal Control Act. I've handed out a copy of the internal control certification and attached that as a summary. And if you have any questions, again, we have representatives from each of the agencies here or myself to answer any questions that you might have.
Lamont, I guess my only question is, as I look through these, if I look at page 2 of 12,
You're talking about the, we're back on the recommendation, sorry.
if we look at 2 of 12, the original implementation date was 11/30/04. And now we have a revised implementation date, 12/31/09. I mean, that's 5 years.
That is correct.
Well, I can't understand a reason why we would put something off, and they're consistent. The next one is 07, and they moved it to 10. And 06 to 10.
One of the things that you had asked of me was to provide this report because I believe there was some concern about dates. So what we have provided in this report is the original report date, the original implementation date, and the date that the revised implementation date as it stands as of Friday, I believe it was.
Okay.
Okay? The agencies and the departments involved have asked, in some instances, for extensions on these implementation dates, but again, at the instructions of this committee, we haven't indicated that in this report because, again, they were coming here, so no revised implementation date has been accepted.
Okay.
I guess he's raising the question, though, why is there such a time limit between the original implementation date and apparently things are not even close to being completed, and dates that are 3 to 5 years after those implementation dates? What happened?
Right. And that's why we asked representatives from the departments involved to come today.
Okay.
So if you would like, we can
Yeah, we've
see
got
who's here.
We've got headquarters, Long Island Railroad. I think those are the two that are the largest.
Would you like to start with headquarters?
Please.
We have a representative from the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights.
Michael's here.
Is Mike here?
Wait. That's an IG one.
That's an IG. That's correct. That is an IG recommendation.
Michael?
Hi, how are you?
The report title is Improving MTA's Disadvantaged Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Contract Provisions. It was, the date of the report was April 29, 2004. The original implementation date was November 30th, 04. Revised implementation date is 12/31/09. That's passed. Have we implemented it?
We've gotten the comments back from all the agencies, including most recently Transit about 2 weeks ago. We are going to implement this over the next 30, 45 days, and I'm just as shocked as you are that it's taken us since 2004 to get this done. But I will guarantee you that the next 30, 45 days, everything will be done and finalized.
Okay, now, you don't have to, we don't have to say okay. I mean, he has to, I mean, since it's not done.
No, you gotta approve the new implementation.
Okay.
Lamont,
Yes.
I don't understand 5 years. I mean, it deserves some explanation as to what happened.
It's true. I can only speak from the time that I began.
I understand.
Right.
I'm not saying
Right.
it's your problem or your creation, but it's ridiculous amount of time.
And I agree.
Well, I think, I was here during part of that time. And as you know, the previous executive director, when these reports initially came out, part of her plan at that point was a reorganization of the Office of Civil Rights. So during that time when the reports were being issued, instead of just dealing with this one issue, there was literally a massive reorganization of civil rights. Staff was moved to different areas. New responsibilities were undertaken. So there was a lot of transitioning going on for, I would say, maybe a year or so during that period. And at some point, that executive director left before that process had been completed. And then a new executive director came on board, and that process was basically undone. Changed, thank you, to kind of go back to the way it was before. So a lot of this took place well before you were here. So I think a lot of what happened during that time frame was a reorganization and then a reorganization of the reorganization as well.
And if I can add to that, with the reorganization, the procedures had to be different than they would have been otherwise. So with each time that things were changed, there was a further delay. But it also raises another question. In other audit committees that I serve on, if staff doesn't meet the target, the audit committee accepts a recommendation for a new commitment date. It has been incredibly frustrating to not have these things addressed. Would it add a little heat to the fire if the committee could or could not change the due date? In other words,
well, I think rather in terms of what the due date should be, obviously, I think the
that
departments
has
have
to
a better.
be set by the department. But
Right.
if it's not met by such a huge amount of time, and this isn't the only one. To be honest with you, if you've looked at these reports over the last 5 years, right now we probably have fewer that are well beyond term
Correct.
than
That's
we
correct.
ever did before. I mean,
is
we're
correct.
showing tremendous improvement, which is, I have to add that because
Right.
having watched it, I know you're doing much, much better out there. But should there be an agreement from the committee that there makes sense to delay something on some of these? And therefore a new date is submitted by the staff?
The staff is here to submit new dates. That is correct.
That's what they're here for.
Oh,
That's what
well,
the
then
new
we'd like
process
to
is.
hear the new dates.
45 days for this one.
Yes,
Right,
45 days
45
from
days.
today, if not sooner.
And Long Island Railroad?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
We have a representative from Long Island Railroad.
They have three.
Yeah.
Four.
What's this 1,400 that we get in this period? It's pretty good.
On page 4. Do you want to start on page 4? Which one are you referring to?
We start on page
yeah.
3, 4,
Long Island Railroad.
5,
Okay.
and
We
6.
we have 6 recommendations outstanding that have gone beyond the 6-month implementation date. 4 of these are system-driven, and I brought along various representatives from the various departments to talk to the recommendations. So with the first one, business continuity, Scott?
Yes.
You wanna-
Regarding the business continuity, we are in the process of finalizing a document right now. This was a pretty intense document that we built. It's based on a disaster recovery mobilization plan. And we were working with Gartner, we were working internally, and we're currently under some pretty heavy constraints right now, meeting our BSC timelines, and this document is moving along, so we hope to have a revised date of 11/1/2010 to deliver on the business continuity. As far as the change management,
Okay?
any questions?
So since we're with IT, we're going to stick with the next one, which is program change control.
Yes, that is another one that is building processes basically around a change management aspect built into a system again. Change management? Well, all right, we're dealing with changes that take place within the Long Island Railroad IT department when it comes to software. If
Management of change.
Software
Yes.
changes.
Enhancements, testing, upgrades, anything that anybody wants regarding their system, we go through a change management process where we actually flow it through. It will flow through a system, be approved by the correct individuals, and that will allow the system implementation to go live. That's basically what a change management process is about. We built the processes manually. Those processes now are going to be going through a system, and that system we hope to have implemented by 3/31. Now, we've had some procurement stuff going on because we have an enterprise architecture working with the CIOs within the agencies and coming up with new revised plans on how we're going to initiate software procurements, and that right now is currently will be underway soon, and we hope to purchase the module within our Maximo system to support this. So the revised implementation date for that, again, is 3/31/2011. And like I said, also the BSC implementation has taken up our resources, and we've restructured the department based on some reduction in forces, so it's been a pretty intense effort.
So now we're going to go back to page 4 of 12 with the penalties and overtime payments, and we have Barry Kaufman here from Transportation Services to talk to those two.
Yeah, we have two projects for the corporate time and attendance, and the first one has to do with implementation within the Transportation Department. We successfully implemented corporate time and attendance in the Transportation Department this January. At that same time, we consolidated the Passenger Services Department within the Transportation Department, and our next scheduled go-live date is August of this year. And at that time, the entire Transportation Department will be under the corporate time and attendance model, at which point we'll do an evaluation of the efficiencies we expect to get, both in terms of the staffing level within our payroll office and the efficiencies we can make by having better information available to us.
That is a Cronus software system that will actually enhance the way we do time and attendance.
How many people in the payroll department you're talking about?
In transportation, there are approximately 7 to 8 people currently doing all the payroll for the Transportation Department.
Okay, any other questions? 9:30:10 is your,
And do you want to talk to the LMAT time and attendance?
Well, they're actually one and the same issue, that the corporate time and attendance will be replacing LMAT, so it's a
So that
joint
was on page
initiative.
6 of 12, the last one on there.
The entire Long Island Railroad will be on a full Cronus system by September.
that's what they do. Okay, so this one's
This one we have 831.
8:31:10. Okay,
Okay, and then the last one that's outstanding is also system-driven, and this is Long Island Railroad's vendor performance, and we have Dennis Mann here to speak to that one.
Good afternoon. This recommendation that goes back to 2008 was one, end of 2008. We had begun to define what the requirements would be to modify our existing procurement system to incorporate vendor performance. At that point in time is when we began to define our requirements to go into PeopleSoft. So we made a decision at that point, hold off on doing it on the existing system, divert the resources to have the requirements defined better and more clearly, more adequately in PeopleSoft. It's now in those requirement documents, and that'll be part of the implementation in January. So that's when we'll be able to implement the recommendation.
I remember that one. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all for Long Island, I think. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We still got one more headquarter one. Staff summaries for procurement approvals.
Cliff here?
He was here.
I think, yeah, he's not here now.
But, yeah, we got 3:30:10, and that's long gone.
No, we didn't, that's the last date we had, we didn't change
Oh,
it.
Mike, look at the comment on that one.
That's the last date, Jim.
Okay, that's 1/19/10. Or July 19/10, I'm sorry. I'm looking at page 3. Down the bottom on comments.
Okay.
Okay, so now we go all the way through until we get to page 7. New York City Transit.
New York City Transit?
Yes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Jim,
Is he looking for more time?
Jim, what was your question? I'm sorry.
The question is that now we've got, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. All of them go back, and the first one, 2008. And the question is, are you going to get it done by this due date, or do you need a revision?
We checked as late as today, and everybody is saying one is done, and everyone else is saying that the new due dates are good.
They're committed to accomplish these goals by the dates indicated. There should be no additional slippage other than what has already transpired on these. Right.
So 1 and 2, you're going to get it done by 12 months.
Correct.
And how about track maintenance?
Track maintenance is an issue due to the reorganizations that have just been experienced in transit. We had a new president, new chief of subways. Track maintenance was deferred, but the new senior vice president of subways is committed to ensure that that will be accomplished by year end, because that's something that cannot slip. That's an issue of safety.
Okay, because it was supposed to have been done by the time before the old president.
Right, and it wasn't. It wasn't. And the excuse that they gave was that there was a reshuffling of personnel. Now they're using the layoff issue as an excuse, but it will not stand as an excuse because customer safety is paramount. So we reiterated that directive to them. Safety cannot slip.
Well, the only thing we can do is bring them here and go through the discussion phase. They're the ones that are in the trenches, and they're the ones who can say whether they can get something done by a certain date. I think the problem we run into is that there are a lot of things outside of their control.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we're a service organization. Service is paramount. There really has never been a follow-up before this. This is 5 out of 600 audit comments, so it's not an A+, but it's also not a D-.
Correction, 847 recommendations. So this is a very low percentage.
And Donald, if you keep bringing them here, these will get implemented.
I think it never got anybody's attention before.
Right, and that was the thing that Jim added.
I just want to say that I don't agree that is a necessary step, but I do think it's important that the committee understand why something has been delayed, because sometimes we can have an influence over whatever that is. In many cases, in the past, when I've been tracking one thing or another, usually for Office of Civil Rights or for Metro North, it's often come to a question of they had to get something through procurement, or in order to really achieve what was needed, they wanted to reorganize something. So, if someone other than the person who sets the goal says, I'd like to reorganize this, it's going to take longer.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that's conveyed to the audit committee, I think that's fine.
Okay, so the other one, 63010 is okay, and 73110 is okay. Page 10. Okay, I think we're all set.
Thank you.
I think the last one is bridges and tunnels. Okay, first one is on page 11, number 1, B&T Health Benefit Eligibility Audit.
Okay. Regarding this issue, the issues that were involved with this, at the agency level, we were corrected after speaking to employees. However, there was a higher issue that depended on headquarters policy to be changed regarding duplication of enrollments. So, at this time, they don't really know exactly when the implementation date will be. It's yet to be determined by them.
Okay, so this
I met, just to give a little background, I met with Diana Ritter, headquarters, on Friday and talked about this one, and I'm sending her an email tomorrow, and action is going to be taken because she's really interested in this one, because this one will also save money. There's some good cost savings associated with this. Yes, we'll come up with a new one, which I think will be in the next few months. It won't be long after.
Okay, number 2, we have a revised date of 12/31/10. Is that still operable?
Yes. Currently, they have implemented that at one of our facilities, and they're planning to bring it across the board to all of our facilities within the end of this year.
Okay, number 3 is People's Health Security Audit.
Yes, that will be me. Not actually, number 3, 4, and 5, they all related to standard operating procedures for the technology department. And when you add up this, like 7 SOP, standard operating procedures, we're supposed to produce. Out of the 7, 5 have been developed. They are all here. They are now being circulated internally for signatures by the directors and people in charge of various applications. So we should be having that before the next audit meeting on the 25th, I guess, 27th. And the 2 that's not in here, again, we're targeting to be completed by that date. And hopefully by then we will have all 7 written up, accepted, and ready to be implemented.
By our September audit meeting?
Yes, before that meeting we will have all 7. Right now I have 5, and it's been reviewed for the final round. And the reason is we had some new technology that we wanted to buy to do these things, and due to budget cuts and all that, we didn't get the license we wanted. So we had to change our method. We actually doing differently. So that's how we were able to do 5. The other 2 are on hold because of the technology being changed, and the client, the Citrix client for new technology we are testing, it's not completed yet, but it will be completed soon, and we are hopeful we will have everything by the next meeting in September.
Okay. Any questions? Do I need a motion to accept the new? Yeah, can I get a motion to accept the new dates, please? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, 2010 audit plan status report.
Fell asleep. The computer fell asleep, but good. Okay, in the audit committee package that I sent you, you have 2 reports that update our audit plan as of June 30th. They are the executive summary of audits completed in 2010 and the status report by individual agency. The information in these reports were provided to the agency presidents, the chief operating officer, and the chairman. In this presentation, I will re-emphasize our 2010 goals, review the overall audit plan status as of mid-year, share the results of our management surveys, review our plans for the second half of 2010, and answer any questions the committee might have. We have aligned our audit and management support services with the MTA's business strategy in order to achieve the objectives listed. Our support of agency-wide goals includes assisting Len D. Simone and the Business Service Center. Several projects have been identified there, such as participating on the readiness team, performing quality assurance work, and reviewing internal controls. As part of the standardization process, we reviewed policy and procedures across all agencies and identified 258 policies and procedures that should be incorporated into the Business Service Center. As the implementation date of 2011 nears, I'll anticipate to increase our involvement due to the criticality of this project. At the agencies, we will continue to balance risk with the applicable business implications and promote effective corporate governance. We also understand the MTA's fiscal situation and have worked vigorously to identify cost-saving opportunities. And finally, as we just discussed, the most important aspect of an audit is the implementation of the audit recommendations. And we do perform follow-up reviews to ensure that the information they provide you here has been implemented and achieved the desired results. I'll just give a little update on what happened within our department. The completion of the audit plan is dependent on a number of resources that we have. The primary resource for an audit department is staffing. As of January 2010, when you approved the audit plan, the department had 102 audit positions. Audit services participated in the 20% salary reduction for MTA headquarters. The effect on this was our resources was the elimination of 17 positions. Having less staff also required less supervision, and within the 17 positions, we eliminated 2 audit director positions. To offset this, the impact, and to maximize the number of audits that we could do, I increased the span of control within the department for each director from 1 to 8. From previously it was 1 to 6. We revised our capital contract audit procedures to free up resources so we could do them on the financial and operational side. And we also reforecasted our annual risk assessment. The effect of this was the elimination and deferral of 23 audits, which I sent to you. But it should be noted that if you did eliminate 17 positions, we would have, if we did not take the action that I just talked about, would have reduced about 60 audits. We're only going to eliminate about 23. This is a summary allocation of our resources provided to the agencies. This is consistent with the resource allocations that was presented to you in January and that was approved by you. Again, one of our challenges for the audit department is to provide coverage to the MTA headquarters and the 6 agencies on a consistent basis while considering overall risk to the MTA. This is also the summary allocation of our actual resources by functional areas and is also consistent with the plan approved in January. We had a very productive first half in 2010. In summary, we completed 78 projects and 123 contract audits with over 400 more recommendations. Our revised plan calls for completing 170 financial compliance and operational audits and 200 contract audits. At this point, we are on target to meet this revised plan, and we'll keep the committee apprised of any changes. We had also very good operating results on the cost-saving side. We identified $38 million on the operating side and $42.7 million on the capital side. I'll provide some details on them in the next few slides. Our major accomplishments of this half related to high-risk areas that we've talked about in the past and the improvement of internal controls at the MTA. Some of the audits that we completed are depicted on this slide and were very well received by upper management. I want to restate to the committee, though, that our primary role is an independent function that apprises risk and internal controls in the organization. With that said, my view of cost savings is that there should be an expectation of an audit department. 30% of our audits result in cost savings. While we take an approach that there's no cost savings too small, our savings range from a low of $44,000 to a high of $21 million. Our significant savings and cost efficiencies were in the areas of medical payments, bus fare box, operating costs, and capital contracts. We follow up with management where applicable to ensure that our savings are reflected in their operating budgets. To achieve quality results, it takes a quality staff. I'm pleased to inform the committee that from the 83 people that we have in 2 administrative positions, we have a staff with a high degree of education, competency, and certification, and almost 50% of our staff does have a professional designation, which is an earmark of a best-in-class audit department. As the committee knows, we sign up to annual performance goals with each agency president. Part of these agreements is a commitment to survey the agencies to obtain feedback on our performance. We sent out more than 68 surveys of people that we did actual audits with to each agency head and senior management. We received 56 surveys back, or 82%. The results has been reviewed, summarized, and analyzed, and we follow up where appropriate with the respondents. We request comments in 4 areas. Scoring is on a scale of 1 to 5. We're looking for a 3 as an indicator of good performance. We once again received overall positive results, and the scores received from the presidents are consistent with what we received from their staffs. So looking at the remainder of the year, we will complete our 2010 audit plan as I discussed. Depicted here are some of our key audits that are in progress. It's very important for us to follow up on the capital reconciliation audit that we did earlier this year, continue our inroads made in the medical cost area, keep an eye on our compliance with the stimulus funds that the MTA is receiving from the federal government, and to strive to identify further cost savings. We will also continue to coordinate activities with the listed external oversight groups. One of the things that I spoke to the chair about is also providing some training for the committee. One of the best practices for an audit committee is to provide periodic training, and we're in the process of procurement to obtain that for the committee, and we're going to have it in September sometime. And I'll get back to you. I'll check your schedules and make sure we coordinate the appropriate date. So with that, that concludes my presentation. And answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from Mike? Well, the results are accepted. Thank you. Now, I need a motion to adjourn and to go into executive session. All in favor? Carried. Okay.
Good.